It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
And Derrick Bell needed to be added to the end of that. Welcome into Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That's Alan Saunders. Right below us, our boy Derrick Bell joining the show for the first time as he recently just joined Pittsburgh Steelers now. Derrick, what's going on?
What's going on, man? Appreciate y'all having me on. I'm excited about making my debut on Steelers Afternoon Drive. Been peeping the comments, been watching the show. Y'all been putting out some good stuff. So I'm excited to be here to talk some Steelers football.
Absolutely appreciate it. Listen, the fans, they know who you are, right? But for anybody that wants to know what can they expect to see within your work, maybe give them a little bit of a brief rundown as to what they can expect.
Nerdy football content. I don't know. Is that the easy way to describe it? I mean, just same thing as always, man. And for people that maybe haven't followed me on Twitter for a long time, but I love football. I love talking about like the intricacies of football. So, film breakdowns, data analysis, like that's kind of my vibe. So I'm excited to, join a really talented team and, be able to kind of put out some really good content alongside Alan, Nick, the rest of the guys. So, yeah, I'm excited about getting going.
Yeah, we're excited to have you, man. It's been awesome so far. We get your first piece up there at SteelersNow.com. You guys can find it if you look there. And we got some more stuff coming in terms of some announcements to make and how this is all going to go forward. But we're super excited to have you, Derrick. And I think we're going to have a lot of fun, man. I think this process is awesome, and I'm very excited about the football people we have between you and Smitty and me and Nick, and just I think we've got the secret sauce. I think we've got people that understand football. I think we've got people that can have some fun with it, and I think that's the best part of it.
Derrick, we're so far away from the draft, my guy, but I was just telling people too, like the first episode that we recorded when you came on, I was like, listen, Derrick's obviously great with the Steelers, great with football in general, but he's about to go into his bag come draft season. We're a ways away from that, though.
Yeah, I'm a sicko in general, but yeah, the draft season is definitely probably when I become the most deranged. And definitely I lose a lot more sleep during that time more than anything else. But yeah, I'm just really excited to be a part of the team, man. Like I said, kind of in my announcement that's up on the site. This is really where I wanted to be, and I have such high expectations for what we can all achieve like as a group. So I'm ready, man. I'm excited.
Speaking of sleep, guys, don't worry. Derrick didn't just wake up. This is just how he normally is. We don't need those comments coming in like he gets on his personal channel.
Yeah.
Speaking of sleeping, I'm hijacking this for a segue. Speaking of sleeping,
this is going to be the
on
segue.
The field behind me. On the field behind me right now, the Steelers just sleepwalked through their 16th practice at training camp. It's a good thing today was the last day, because I think if there was another one like this, Mike Tomlin might have killed some people. It was sloppy, unpadded, half-efforted affair. We didn't see a lot of special teams. I guess we can talk about that. But of the 16 training camp practices this year, this was one of them. Not one of the good ones.
I mean, I don't know if you were speaking with some hyperbole when you first joined here, but you said this might be the worst practice you've covered since covering the team.
It was very low energy. Let's just say that. It was not a spirited affair. Normally, like when something is happening that all the players aren't involved in, like there's like three other things happening at the same time, right? So you have like 7-on-7. Well, the linemen don't do 7-on-7. So the linemen come over here and they're going to do 1-on-1s. And then, of course, like the kickers aren't linemen or 7-on-7. So they're over there kicking to, whatever. Like there was like a kickoff period where like it was literally just like 9 guys standing there waiting for the ball to kick off, and the entire rest of the team was on the bench. Just like nothing is happening right now. So, it was unlike, man, like Mike Tomlin really beat the crap out of these guys this year. 6 straight padded practices leading up to this one. They certainly deserved a down day, but it was a noticeably down day.
We talked a lot every single day about 7 shots. I mean, is there, obviously with the way that you're talking about practice going in general, is there a takeaway at all from 7 shots today?
They tried about as hard in that as they did in everything else. The defense won. mostly just because the offense was not doing very well. It was a couple missed passes. It was kind of a mess, but it was a resounding win for the defense. I think the defense was better on the day overall. When we got into team period, they had like 4 interceptions today, all off Trubisky, Rudolph, and Tanner Morgan, who practiced a lot today, and I assume we will see him again in the preseason game. But that's probably really the only takeaway I have from like today's practice is that the defense was better. The defense got their hands on the ball a lot. We saw a number of interceptions. Trenton Thompson had one. Mark Robinson had one that I think would have been a pick six on a tip ball. And there's a couple more. Oh, Jonathan Marshall had one that was on a tip ball. Not every day you see a nose tackle make an interception, so that's interesting. I think there was one more too, but I can't remember who grabbed the other one. Anyway, there's a lot of takeaways, but not many takeaways, if you know what I'm saying.
There we go. Well, you mentioned it was a heavy special teams day, though. So what was your takeaway from that, if anything else? We did see and we did hear from Mike Tomlin that Anthony McFarland will be the number 1 kick returner. So obviously that was probably put on display in practice today.
Yeah, I mean, not live, no pads. So, like, I don't know what you see. But most of the important things that happened today happened before practice when Mike Tomlin talked to us over in the Rogers Center. We're going to get the starting specialist for this game. We're going to get Calvin Austin returning punts and Anthony McFarland returning kicks. It was Jordan Byrd, rookie free agent out of San Diego State, who did that in both of those jobs in the first preseason game, and I would say did not do those jobs particularly well. It certainly looks like it's going to be Austin and McFarland. Those are going to be the guys. Talked to Calvin Austin today after practice a little bit. He said he's excited. He's fired up. He feels ready for that punt return job. Anthony McFarland has obviously returned kicks before for the Steelers, so not super surprising that he's in that role. But yeah, I mean, it was definitely a special teams heavy practice, and also for the first time, they probably did it in their walkthrough, but this is the first time we've seen in practice them do any kind of scout team. So we got to see them run some of the Bills plays and how they go against the Steelers first team defense, and then the Steelers offense trying to attack the Buffalo defense. There were a couple big plays in that period. Najee Harris had a long touchdown run. I want to talk about Najee today too. Probably get to that a little bit later, but lots of news from Tomlin. So let's run down those first. 3 guys rolled out for this game: Larry Ogunjobi, Nate Herbig, and Trey Norwood. Everyone else is expected to play. So that is, that means like 6 or 7 guys that didn't play in that first game: TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, Keanu Neal, DeMonte KZ, Joey Porter Jr., Chris Boswell. All those guys that didn't play in that first game are going to play in this one. That's a good sign. Kenny Pickett in the first team offense going to play more. Mike Tomlin didn't commit to an amount, but it's, he said more than the first game. And talked about we will see those starting specialists. So, I mean, that's kind of the big news of the day. Certainly more newsworthy than the practice.
As far as the specialists go, I think that like when we came into once the Steelers acquired Braden Mann, people were kind of thinking, okay, this is really to push Harvin. Like this could mean that Harvin isn't on the team this year. Haven't necessarily I don't know what your takeaway is from that competition, if you will, but do you feel like we're at a point now where it pretty securely is Presley Harvin's job?
I think for those guys, especially, the in-stadium reps count a lot more than what happens here at practice. They know that they can't get hit by these guys here when they're punting. And so I think it's kind of fundamentally different when you're facing a live rush. And the other thing is that Presley Harvin, his good has been very good. The problem has just been consistency. So I don't think I'm willing to sit here on, after one preseason game and say the job is his, because if he has 2 bad games, tomorrow and against Atlanta, then maybe it isn't his, because the consistency to me is really the thing that he needs to prove. But I think he has been the better of the 2 punters so far. And if I had to pick one right now, I would pick him as the guy.
Derek, do you have a take on that?
Punting.
We know you love your punters.
I think that it's a very smart move for the Steelers to bring in competition for Harvin. Like kind of Alan said, I mean, the good with Presley's always been good enough, right? It's just the back-breaking 20-yard punt that gets shanked towards the sideline in the third quarter of a tight game. Like those type of things are things that drive coaches, special teams coaches, absolutely insane. So I think establishing that consistency is a really important part. The problem is even in 2 or 3 preseason games, there's not really a ton of reps to go off of. I mean, you're talking about a maximum of, 6-7 punts total. So making the most of his opportunities. I have seen some tweets just from Al and Nick, other guys at training camp, saying that it seems like he's had a better training camp this year than he did last year. I was personally just absolutely flabbergasted that they did not bring in competition for him last year, like real competition, and just kind of handed him the job. At least this year, it seems like they wanted to push him a little bit more for some of that consistency, which I think is a good idea.
Yeah. Alan, would you, because it's interesting that Derrick said about last training camp. I guess I just wasn't paying enough attention because I feel like the issue's never really been like in practice for him. It's just it translating to in game. It's funny because we've had a conversation about, and this again is just from the outside and only being able to go off tweets and stuff. It always just seems like to me, like he is pretty good in practice, but it's not translating to games all the time.
I think he's been inconsistent even in practice.
Okay.
Early in his career. He was, it's interesting. He was really good his rookie year throughout training camp. None of that was there. He was great. He beat out Jordan Berry that year. And I think he fairly beat him, even though he was the draft pick. I think he was better. Somewhere along the line, I don't know where and when, but this inconsistency that kind of crept in has been kind of ugly. And like Derrick said, it takes a lot of good to offset a 27-yarder. That's really bad. And so I think he's been much more. I have not seen him make a bad punt all training camp. He's just been very consistent. Some of them have not been great, but I haven't seen any bad ones. And I think that's the big. Every time when we stand on the sideline, we stand maybe 5 yards off the sideline there. And when there's a bad punt, your word goes down heads up, get out of the way because you're going to get hit with the ball. And every time that happened all training camp, it was 4 punting and not 6 punting. I think that's a really good sign. Maybe just shanked all his to the player side that I wasn't noticing. But I think that's a pretty good sign for him that he has been much more consistent throughout training camp. He did not punt. Braden Mann did all the punts in the first game against Tampa. So we'll see if it can carry over. If he has a good game against Buffalo and he has a good game against Atlanta, he's the punter, and that's that. But if not, then we'll see, because I think Braden Mann is a very talented punter also.
So it's about, so Presley can hold him off just by obviously doing his job. But yeah, I want to ask you, you mentioned that you talked a little bit to Calvin Austin today. What was that conversation about? What did you learn there, and what can we expect going forward?
He's excited to return punts. He's a young guy that hasn't played that much, and I always think the things that get them in trouble are not their ability to return punts, but their decision making. I think that's where you sometimes see guys get into trouble. And so I asked him about that, and he was like, yeah, it's important. You have the entire team's possession sort of in your pocket there, where it's your responsibility to not screw it up. And he said, look, I'm a part of this offense. I want it to be in good possession. I'm hurting myself if I don't. And so I just think he has a good mindset for it. We'll see how he does. That's a position where Mike Tomlin doesn't have a lot of. You don't get too many mulligans. If you make a couple big bad mistakes, that's the end of your time as the Steelers punt returner. So again, it'll be about consistency, and we'll see how that goes. But I think he's been solid so far when he's gotten some chances to do that, and he's very excited to do it in the game. He's very excited to be at the game in general. He's been a Steeler for 15 months, and this will be his first game at Acrisure Stadium, so he's pretty fired up about that.
Derrick, I think a few months ago, you actually made a video about Calvin Austin. And at this point, we're not just talking about him as a punt returner, just him as a player, how electric he can be with the ball in his hands. What are your thoughts on Calvin Austin heading into this season? Obviously health first and foremost.
Yeah, you mentioned it, health, but not to spoil, an article that I'm writing for the site tomorrow, but Calvin Austin's definitely still one of the players that I'm looking forward to watching most in the second preseason game, just because the debut was everything that you could have possibly hoped it would be. A 67-yard bomb for a touchdown down the left sideline. He actually led the Steelers in rushing yards against the Bucs, which probably says more about the running game, but he still ripped off, I think it was about a 20-yard jet sweep as well. So
the 17 and a 6.
Yeah, so I mean, just being able to create those explosive plays, that's really what the Steelers offense has been, missing. And, not just Calvin's ability to, stretch the field vertically, but stretch it horizontally, like just getting the ball in his hands, I think is really exciting. And just selfishly for me as a football fan, I want to see him with the ball even more. So that's why I think he should return punts until we know that he can't. And he did return a couple kicks at Memphis, some of which even went for touchdowns. So I think anytime you can get the ball in a playmaker's hands like that, I'm all for it. I want to see more of it.
Right. Absolutely. Alan, we had a conversation. It's funny that we just had a conversation yesterday about this player, and then he gets brought up by Mike Tomlin today. But Najee Harris, we want to have a conversation about him because he was brought up specifically by Mike Tomlin. Was he asked something about Najee, and that's why he answered the way that he did in terms of his reps?
He was asked about Najee by me.
Oh,
maybe because of the conversation we had yesterday. I asked him, I was like, are you giving him less reps because he got hurt last year? And I thought it was a very good answer. He said, no, we're not worried about, we didn't change what we do because Najee got hurt last year, and we're not worried about Najee getting hurt again this year. But he's now a third-year guy that has been in this offense for all 3 years. He's running behind 6 of the same 7 blockers that he had last year or something like that. Like, it is – there's a less need for him to have physical reps right now to be ready. And I definitely feel like there is this sort of conversation that's been brewing that Najee Harris has not been that good at Steelers training camp. And I kind of wanted Mike to address it because I don't think they need him to be very good. I don't think that they've set out to be like, oh, show us what you can do. Like they know what he can do, and they're more focused on him being ready for the year than anything else.
Derrick, what's your take on all this? Because I'm sure you've also noticed a lack of Najee Harris's name on your timeline.
Yeah, it's rare because, you think about how the Steelers kind of made that run last year, right? It was really through the run game. So for him to not get any sort of hype really in training camp at all, I think he only carried the ball maybe once in the opener. I can't even really recall.
He did not carry the ball. He caught a pass.
Okay, that's what it was.
He didn't have a carry.
Yeah, the swing pass from Pickett. Just in general, it is a little bit odd, especially for a first-round pick just a couple years ago to not generate any type of buzz. But I do think that, Najee's rookie year, when they got to the playoffs against the Chiefs, we kind of all knew that they didn't really deserve probably to be there. But Najee was really on his last kind of leg, which was the opposite of last year. I felt like as the season went on, he was getting healthier. He was kind of hitting his stride. Regardless of what Tomlin says, I think that does play a little bit into it because they do know what he can bring when he's healthy and when he's fresh. And I think the important part is, the Steelers' aspirations this season, I think, are to make the playoffs. Those are realistic expectations and goals. And in order to do that, they kind of need Najee in this run game to kind of pilot this offense in the right direction. And I think just keeping him healthy and fresh is the most important thing that they can do right now in August.
And I think the other thing is they have guys that they don't necessarily need him to work this offense. Like Jalen and Ant can go run every day, and it's not like they need him to do. Sometimes guys have to practice because the other guys have to practice. If that makes sense. Like you can't practice without your center like taking a whole bunch of reps. Like it just doesn't work. Even if you don't need your center to do anything because you trust him, like he's just a part of the operation. But I think both Jalen Warren and Anthony McFarland are not only going to make this team, but have roles in this offense. So it makes sense for them to get some reps with the ones, to be catching balls from Kenny Pickett, taking handoffs from Kenny Pickett, running behind the first team offensive line. Like, yeah, Anthony McFarland's third string on the depth chart, but it really does him no good to be out here running behind the 3 offensive line every day. Like that's useless to him at this point in his career. So I think there's no urgency just to go see Najee Harris. Like everything works without him in it as long as he's good to go week 1 against San Francisco.
And just one more thing with that, I do wonder too, the Steelers' run game in general is very direct and specific. They don't have a very multiple or varied run game. It's really pretty much just outside zone and split zone. So it's not like they're putting in just a ton of different run concepts, or that they're going to show those in the preseason, even if they want to be more varied or multiple this year.
We put in a bunch of exotic stuff this week. Maybe you've heard of it: inside zone and duo.
Yeah, yeah. So I just don't know how many reps does he really need on that. I mean, we saw Najee. He literally led the NFL last year in outside zone carries. He by like almost a dozen. I mean, it wasn't even really that close either. So I just think allowing the backups, especially Warren, like you said, he's going to have a role within this offense. I don't think it's a bad thing to get those guys more comfortable getting used to the blocking from the starters.
Did Tomlin say the word older when referring to Najee Harris, or was that just something that was put in the tweet that I'm looking at?
I believe he said the word. Maybe he said more experienced.
Okay. Well, it's just funny. Like, I mean, obviously we're all getting older, right? We're older today than we were yesterday, but like a 25-year-old talking about as he gets older, it was just funny to me when I saw that.
I mean, look, I think if you by your third year in the NFL, and especially if it's your third year with the same team, same system, mostly the same teammates, and in a position that's not, not quarterback, not middle linebacker, not free safety, where you're like doing a bunch of team stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's an older guy. Like, to me, like that's a guy that does not need 100 reps in training camp to be good.
Alan, I'm 28, so if he's referring to somebody that's 25 years old as older,
washed.
I feel a lot worse.
That's what you are, washed.
I mean, if I was a running back right now,
and let's not bring up what that makes me a couple months away from 40. Let's just not even mention that. All right.
Yeah, I mean, if we were,
I want to talk about Anthony
McFarland
too, because didn't we get a question about Anthony McFarland?
We did. We got a comment. I don't know if it was so much a question as a comment. So at least one person has put out a 53-man roster projection that did not have Anthony McFarland on that 53-man roster. And somebody commented on the YouTube machine here talking about that. Let me find exactly what it said, though. Yeah, well, they mentioned the person by name that did it. Why is he predicting Ant Mac to not make the 53-man roster?
Well, I don't know, because I can't speak for – it's Ray Fittipaldo from Post-Gazette. I can't speak for Ray, but I don't agree with that, because I think Ant is a good backup, a good change of pace. I think he's going to play special teams. I think that's really the big thing, is that, like, he is he's going to be their starting kick returner. He's going to work probably like field goal block. He's probably going to be a protector on the punt team. Like, he's got a job here to do that is beyond running back 3. And I can't see this team only keeping 2 running backs. I just can't. They never have. They run the ball too much for that, for me. I think not only will he be on the team, I think he'll be active on game days.
Yeah, I think the special teams part is really what is being talked about here. At least from Ray's point of view, that's what he brought up, was he doesn't think he's going to play special teams, and the Steelers won't carry him as a third running back if he doesn't.
I think he's gonna. I mean, Mike Tomlin said he's going to be the kickoff returner. That's obviously part of special teams. I think he can be a multi-phase special teamer too. There's no reason he can't. He's fast. I mean, and the other thing is, like, I think we've got to reevaluate how much we think special teams matter in terms of roster construction when kickoffs are basically not going to be a thing anymore. I mean, like, let's be honest, like the number of kickoffs per game that are actually going to be returned might average less than 1 per team. Like, I mean, I don't know what, like, we're not keeping people to cover kicks anymore. Like, you're not, and field goal has never been a reason that anybody made the team. They make the team, and then they pick the guys they want to be on the field goal team. So really all you got left is, punt and maybe kickoff return. I don't know. It's not a big deal either way, but I think he makes the team on both running back merit and in special teams.
Derek, this is probably this is probably Ant Mac's last shot at it's kind of a surprise that this guy's still around. Like, I mean, because the average shelf life for an NFL player is less than how long Anthony McFarland's been with the Steelers, and we haven't seen him play that much. So maybe it's just because he's a Maryland guy, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you guys hit the nail on the head with that. One thing with Ant, I really did think that I made a short video on McFarland a couple weeks ago, probably a month ago, I guess. But I really thought in the preseason last year, I thought that he looked pretty good. The Jaguars game, I thought that he flashed a good bit. we really only saw him in the regular season against the Colts, but they were actually designing plays for him, sort of like to get him out in the route concepts and stuff. Like they were running plays where he was, the first or second option. They threw him a screen pass. My biggest thing with McFarland has been, now that I think the game has slowed down a little bit for him and it's helped his vision concerns coming out of college, is McFarland going to be good enough in pass protection to ever trust him on the field in third down? You know that Najee Harris, that Jaylen Warren can protect the quarterback in those passing situations that they need to stay in and block. I'm not sure that I know the answer to whether or not the Steelers think that he's capable of doing that, because you can't have somebody on the field in those scenarios and just automatically say, like, all right, you're going out for a route every time. Like, defenses will scheme that up to where they are attacking a bad pass protector. So that's what I want to see in the preseason from Ant. But overall, like you guys said, hit the nail on the head. Who else is going to take the job from him? That's my question. Who else was on the roster prediction instead of Ant Mac? I haven't heard.
There was only two traditional running backs, and it had like Connor Hayward could get some carries.
Okay.
Besides those two. Yeah.
I mean, Connor can run the ball, but I don't think anybody thinks he's a running back. Like, he's yeah, I don't know. Also, Connor's not a great pass blocker from a running back stance either, if that would be the reason that you would make that exchange. So, I don't know. It could happen. Nick and I were talking about surprise cuts today. He's probably gonna write that. I don't know, maybe this weekend, about just guys that could be potentially surprise cuts from this team. Maybe Anthony McFarland would be one of them. I think probably not, though. What else we got in YouTube land? What else do people want to know?
So somebody else here, and this one's like right at the top, this is a more recent one that came in, was somebody wondering why it's just like so set in stone with Mitch as the number 2 and Mason the number 3, because Mason has looked better, in their opinion, throughout training camp and in the one preseason game.
Well, because Mitch Trubisky is better at almost everything there is to be at in terms of being a quarterback than Mason Rudolph. I don't know. Like, and not only that, like his salary is guaranteed. Like this is not a real competition. There's a number 2 quarterback and there's a number 3 quarterback, and that's that. I thought Mason was very good playing against Tampa's 4th-string defense, and he did the one thing that he has always been really good at, which is throwing a deep ball and dropping it in the bucket. He is good at that. I just can't see. I mean, Mitch would get, like, if something happened to Kenny, Mitch would get multiple games to play before they were like, oh, it's not working, we'll go to Mason. Like, it's not a real. Mike Tomlin will tell you everything's a competition. It's not a real competition.
Derek?
Yeah, I don't know. I know there are still some Mason stands within Steeler Nation, and I respect the grind. I really do. But like Alan said, I don't see this as much of a competition. I think that like he said, I think Mitch would get multiple opportunities to kind of screw it up before they would hand the ball to Mason. That's just how.
And Mitch was fine when he did that last year, so yeah. I don't know why we would think that would happen.
Yeah, and I think definitely do want to give credit, because I was joking around about some of Mason's stuff on Twitter during the game, but I do think, I said it to one of my buddies, like watching the game. I said, Mason's going to get in here and he's going to start cooking these 3rd-string bums. And that's just exactly what he did. I mean, that throw to Calvin Austin under pressure with a guy in his face to drop it, really out of the sky. And, Austin really barely even had to slow up for it. I mean, he had so much separation that it didn't even matter, but it was a heck of a throw. So I want to give him credit for that. We're probably going to see the same thing against Buffalo. I'm just letting y'all know, that's, if y'all are bettors out there, I think I'd take the Steelers just because Mason's going to get in there and probably cook the 3rd string again.
Let me say this. I think the more likely than Mason Rudolph passing the Mitch Trubisky is some other team making a pass at Mason Rudolph and saying, oh, our backup's hurt, or we don't have a good backup situation. And now that teams can dress 3, he may be attractive enough to somebody that they may offer something for him. He's very cheap under the salary cap. I think that is much more likely than the Steelers making him their backup quarterback.
Yeah, I would agree. Just going down a little bit more here, somebody mentioned how excited they are to see Quan Alexander play in dime specifically. You mentioned on yesterday's episode that we had kind of started to see that. Like, we were really curious as to what they were going to look like in different sub packages, and saw that. I don't know if we touched on really how they looked in that. I mean, it was really like the first time that we've seen it. So
it was 7-on-7. So like,
yeah,
it's hard to say, but I do think Quan. I think Quan will be the dime linebacker, and I think his skill set fits it pretty well. He's a very interesting guy. Derek, maybe you have some insight on this because he's a guy that I think if you look at like the stats and maybe some of like PFF's tackling grade on him is just awful. And then I see him here in training camp and I see him in the preseason. I'm like, he hits people. I think a lot of the times those grades don't take into account enough the difficulty of the assignment. Like when you have guys that are like, oh, you're a fast linebacker. Oh, that means you're going to go cover a fast athletic guy in space. And then probably are going to miss more tackles as a result. If you're a Landon Roberts, then like the most aggressive pass, coverage assignment you might get all year is somebody's fullback. And so then you're not going to miss any tackles because it's impossible to miss that one. Is that what's happening with him? What is your take on that? That sort of how the play doesn't really necessarily line up with what those numbers say.
So with Quan in particular, this has kind of been my viewpoint of Quan throughout his career is that he is very, very volatile in good and bad ways. He will play out of control. I mean, we saw part of the best version of Quan in the preseason opener. Like you said, he will hit people. Like he's only listed at like 225, 230 pounds. He's relatively light, but
not a big dude.
At the point of contact, that dude has a violent mindset. And I think that's why Steeler fans are going to absolutely love him. Quan will also play very fast, like you said, which can lead to, him being a little bit sloppy in his technique. The big thing with Quan is he will find himself out of position from time to time. You'll see some false steps. When I was watching him on tape, he was responsible for a couple of the big runs, just getting out of his gap, because he'll oftentimes try to like undercut a blocker and make a play from the backside. And if you're going to, do that, you absolutely have to make the play. If you don't, you open up a huge lane for the running back. In coverage, Quan's a good athlete, but I think the Steelers, between him and Holcomb, I think they have solid athletes at linebacker. I'm not sure either one of them are particularly instinctive in coverage, which is a little bit problematic. But I think I prefer Quan's skill set at least a little bit more over Holcomb, who, in my opinion, was probably one of the more disappointing players in the opener. I thought that Holcomb kind of struggled a little bit, just was a little bit all over the place with his eyes. So Quan's volatile. He'll have some really good games. He'll probably have some bad games as well. But overall, for the vet men, I don't think that they could have done anything better. I mean, I thought he played extremely well in the opener. I'm excited to see what he looks like going forward.
And I talked to Mark Robinson today, and I'm going to get everyone excited about this, but Mark Robinson is obviously, he's like the puppy dog following those three big dogs around, right? Where it's his second year as a pro, second year with the Steelers, and third year playing linebacker in a room with Holcomb, Roberts, and Quan Alexander. And he made a nice play. Oh, was that the interception I left out? Mark? No, I did say his. His was, no, you said, probably would have been a pick six on a ball that was tipped to the line of scrimmage. He was, right in the right spot and grabbed it and ran with it. But he was like, yeah, man, I'm going to try to take something from all their games. Like I'm like got like a shopping list. Like I want that from him. I want that from him. And I'm like, if he does that with his natural athleticism, like he could turn into a really good player because he's got some good mentors there. And it's like, like Derek was saying, like, it's like a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And like none of those guys are complete players, mostly because none of them are like elite athletes. If you could put their traits on an athlete like Mark Robinson, you would be getting somewhere near like elite linebacker play.
Yeah. I want your all's take on this, just because this is just something that's been kind of bothering me a little bit throughout the summer and offseason in general. Every time I hear Mark Robinson get asked by like a reporter to Tomlin or to Tara Austin, it seems like they kind of, I don't want to say shoot it down, but I don't know how else to explain it, where it's like, they pump the brakes on, like, could he have a role? They pump the brakes immediately on it. Why do you guys think that is? And then also, Mark Robinson was out there getting snaps like late in the second half against the Bucs. And I just wonder, do we in the media or in the fan base, do we have a higher impression of Mark Robinson than the coaching staff does? And why do you think that is?
I think there's a level of excitement for Mark Robinson that is shared. I think the coaching staff is very excited about him. I think the coaching staff does not want to play him. Like
Okay.
I would not be surprised if like we, especially maybe not the 49ers, but like, you know, like Bengals week, like we're probably not going to see much of Mark Robinson. Like, you know, like I think it's going to be his playing time is going to be very sheltered. He is still a guy that very much is learning on the job, that makes a lot of mistakes, even if he makes a lot of good plays. That's not a position like you're talking about. Like mistakes lead to splash. Like, you know, when you're responsible for a big hunk of the center of the defense, can't be in the wrong place too often. He's still learning. That's why I think the coaching staff is definitely pumping the brakes on like the Mark Robinson hype train. Like there are in the Steelers linebacker room, there's like 1A, 1B, 1D, 1A, 1B, 1C, and 14. Like that's about how the coaching staff has those guys ranked. Like it's not close. He's not going to play hardly at all, but I think they're excited about him long term as like because of the athleticism, because of his mindset. He just loves to hit. He's a football lover. He fits in with exactly what they want from that position, but he's nowhere near a finished product in their mind. And I think the idea of like big reps for Mark Robinson against a team that's not like last year's Ravens offense where they just want to run the ball kind of terrifies them.
Here's how I'm viewing it, Alan. You'll appreciate this. This might
Okay.
be an awful analogy, but this is one that is
I
very
appreciate
perfect for
all
this show.
analogies, even awful ones.
So the Pittsburgh Steelers are one of our listeners or watchers, depending on what platform they're listening to or watching on. Mark Robinson is the best possible vehicle that can be sent into us. This person has been working on this. They just started a little bit ago. They're working on this vehicle, and they're not unveiling it until it's absolutely perfect.
That's right.
This is their
That's
baby
right.
project.
They've got like, you know, one stripe and a sticker, and that's it. Like they're not there yet. And I think that's a good analogy for where the Steelers are with Mark Robinson. They got big plans. They did not invest a lot of money in the base product, but they are investing a lot of time and getting it to where it wants to be, and they're excited about where it's going. But excited about where it's going is very different than ready to be displayed right now. And I think that's exactly why when you ask a Steelers coach about Mark Robinson, it's like, slow down, calm down. Like, we don't know what we have yet. Could be really fun on special teams this year, though. I could see like him and Nick Herbig like running down covering punts next to each other. Like that sounds like a lot of fun to me. That sounds like some guys wrecking some stuff.
Alan, I won't ask you this until tomorrow, but Derrick, before we get out of here, preseason game versus Buffalo, give me one thing that you're most looking forward to.
Joey Porter Jr. This is literally my article for tomorrow, but Joey Porter Jr. is at the very top. I want to see how far he's came with his footwork, and I want to see, you know, what his technique looks like at the line of scrimmage. I want to see if they let him play with the starters, like when they go, because I mean Buffalo is going to probably play more 12 personnel with Kincaid this year than they did last year, but I want to get him some reps against Stephon Diggs. I'm sure Porter's ready to go up against some other receivers other than Deontay Johnson and George Pickens. So I want to see what he looks like against Diggs. Just throw him into the fire and just, for better or worse, let him get some reps. So Porter's tape will definitely be the very first thing that I watch whenever I get that the day after the game. So he's definitely number one on my list.
Porter's going to see that 14 across from him and think it's still Pickens in practice, and he's going to fist fight Stephon Diggs. That's what's going to happen. All right, well, let's leave it at that. We don't want you to ruin any of this article that people absolutely need to read at SteelersNow.com. But Alan and Derrick, we'll start with Derrick. Tell people where they can find you. And I don't know that you need to necessarily say where people can find you work, because now we know. This is the home.
Yeah, this is home, man. So SteelersNow.com, y'all can read everything that I'm writing. Plenty of analysis, plenty of breakdowns and stuff coming your way. Also, my Twitter handle is Steelers_DB for those that don't follow me on there. So,
and Alan?
At Saunders_PGH on Twitter and Instagram. At PGH Steelers Now is the site's account on Twitter and on YouTube. SteelersNow.com is where all my work lives, where this video will live. And man, I'm ready. It was a lot of fun doing this every day here. My little dugout is right over there. It's full like crates because we're packing up. But this was the most fun I've had covering training camp. I feel like doing this show was a big part of it. It's been great interacting with the people. Love the comments, love the questions. We need more cars. Keep them coming. I'm determined to get more cars, and we're gonna. Smitty, I've been working on it. We're gonna make like an official ranking graphic or something so that we can give people their rank. Steelers Afternoon Drive certified vehicle. Maybe that would be if we get someone to put our logo on their
yeah.
Yeah. You
It's
come on
coming.
the show if you're willing to do that.
it's coming.
I'll get some stickers made up. Right, I need to get some stickers made up. I think that's where we're at here.
The listeners and viewers are still in training camp mode too. So once we're about to get it, really start ramping it up, season. And we'll we'll get it going. You guys can find me at Zachary Smith PGH. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave us a like, hit that notification bell so you don't miss this video, all the Steelers Afternoon Drives, any other content that gets put out of the channels, whether that's, well, I would say camp reports, but practice reports, any other content that you guys can find on the channel. Leave us a 5-star review if you're listening somewhere else, all that good stuff. For Derrick Bell, for Alan Saunders, I'm Zachary Smith, and we'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.